Hello and welcome to another Whiteboard Training Friday. I'm Isaiah Henkel with Cheeky Scientist, and today we are talking about how to answer the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I'm going to talk about this at a very practical level. What can you say exactly to that question? What should you say? And I'm going to talk to you about it in a little bit more of a complex level. We're going to kind of peel back the layers of what employers want to know when they ask that question. And I'm going to help you understand how you can prepare, not just for that question, but for all the questions that are going to really be asked to you to help understand whether or not you have any business acumen, whether or not you can stop thinking like an academic and start thinking like a business professional. So when you're asked the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? The question sounds like they just want to know where you're going to be in 5 years. And that, of course, logically and very practically is true, but really what they want to know is, are you considering your career trajectory? You know, in academia, as PhDs, we've had a path set before us. And, we at least we thought we did. We get to this step of getting our PhD, and then we go on and maybe do a postdoc, and then we go on and get a professorship, etc. Of course, we've learned that path is no longer there, which is why if you're watching this, you're probably looking for industry jobs, you're looking for jobs outside of academia, because that professorship path is all but extinct. In industry, where you go next is in large part in your hands. You have to be motivated, you have to show initiative. You have to be looking ahead to see where you can go vertically or where you can go laterally inside an organization. And the company wants to make sure that your goals are aligned with their goals. Okay, so let's break this down. I'm going to start very practically first. So when you're asked the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? The worst thing you can say is, I see myself in a management position, right? Or I see myself in XYZ position at this company, which very likely, if you're talking to a hiring manager, is above their position. So essentially what you're saying is, I'm going to be your manager. My goal is to be your manager and be your boss and tell you what to do. Okay, you don't want to do that, right? So that's why I want you to stay away from the word manager. I want you to stay away from other titles, other specific titles, such as senior level XYZ. Let's say you're trying to get into a scientist position. Don't say you want to be in a senior scientist position. Again, the person you talk to, your audience, needs to be considered. So especially if you're talking to somebody in HR, especially if you're talking to somebody who's not yet a manager, right? Or somebody who is a manager. And you're essentially, if you say you want to be a manager, you're saying, I'm going to take your job when I get hired. So it's best to steer clear of this. You want to show initiative, you want to show ambition, of course, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. So what you should do is, number one here, talk about getting into a leadership position. Okay, that's the word I want you to use, leadership. If they ask you where you want to be in 5 years, say, I'm really interested in getting into a leadership position because I'd like to continue to advance my transferable skills, such as conflict resolution, such as my communication skills, etc. And I'd like to grow in this area and become more and more of a leader. Okay, so again, just come back to that word, that L word, the leadership position, over and over again. But now let's get into the deeper, more complex part of the question. Okay, so again, they're asking these questions because they want to know if you can think like a business professional. They want to know if you're thinking ahead, if you're looking at your career trajectory, if you're thinking about things like corporate strategy, corporate culture, and so forth. So number two here is industry hierarchy. Okay, in a lab or when you're TAing or in academia in general, there's a pretty flat hierarchy. And what companies want to know is that you understand that that's unusual. Okay, usually there's more of a layered hierarchy, right? Companies have some companies, especially larger companies like a Pfizer or a Google or an Intel, they have several layers or levels on their organizational chart, right? So it's commonly called an org chart. Have you studied this company to know what the levels are in terms of the position that you're getting into, in terms of the department, in terms of the overall company? Let's say you're trying to get into a scientist role. What's above that at that company? The titles sometimes change. You have to know what's vertically above, right? What's the vertical career trajectory? And also, what are some of the lateral or cross-functional departments that you could be interacting with that you could also transition into later? So again, going back to the scientist example, it might be scientist, senior scientist, principal scientist, right? Then you might get into like director roles, or from there you could go on to CSO roles. Maybe it gets more general, just general VP positions. You need to know this, and there's a great way to learn it. Get on LinkedIn, look at a company's page, all the employees at that company, and by looking at their titles, you'll start to be able to understand who reports to who, what that org chart looks like. And of course, when you're interviewing, you can ask. You can simply ask, and they'll give you the answer. Say, well, the last person you hired into this role, what did their career trajectory look like? You know, is there, if you've been here for 5 years, right, if you're talking to somebody in HR, if they've been there for a while, say who's somebody you hired a few years ago, are they still in this same position? Where have they moved? You want to turn the tables like that on the interviewer because they need to show you that you have a trajectory, that you're not going to be in the same position 5, 10 years later from now, okay? So start thinking in terms of industry hierarchy. There can be several levels vertically again, but also think about the cross-functional departments you're going to interact with. That's a great question to ask too. What are the other departments here that I'm going to be interacting with in this role, right? You might be in R&D, but you're going to interact a lot with regulatory affairs. You're going to interact a lot with marketing, right? There could be multiple departments, and these departments are not just people, again, that you're going to interact with, but they could be transition points for you for your next role at that company. Number 3, corporate strategy. I talked about this a little bit, right? A great way to figure out the strategy or where to start in terms of an interview or a phone screen or even networking is to figure out the question, why are they hiring? Why are they considering bringing you on or other candidates on? Do they have a new product they're about to launch? Did they recently merge with another company? Did they recently acquire another company, right? And mergers and acquisitions are not just these massive things that you hear about in the news, right, with the biggest companies involved. They happen all the time, right? So there's a merger and acquisition happening right now at most companies, right? Some small merger, some small acquisition is in process right now. It could just be buying a certain line of products, a very small line of products from a very small company. Okay, so you have to start reading and learning about this. How can you learn about it? You can go to earnings calls. Earnings calls, so they're calls where a publicly traded company, they get on the phone and they talk, right? The other people usually don't talk back. It's just like a conference call where you can listen only. And they talk to their shareholders, they talk to media, but anybody can join because it's a publicly traded company. Just go to Google and type in earnings call list. Right, you'll have an earnings call list on NASDAQ.com. You'll have earnings call lists on all different types of sites that list these, Fierce Biotech, etc. So just search earnings call list, right? And these calendars of earnings calls will show up and you can plug them into your calendar and you can start showing up to them and you can start learning about how companies think strategically. Why is this important? Because again, when a company hires you, when they're considering hiring you, they want to make sure your strategy, where you're going to be in 5 years, where you're going to be in 1 year, matches up with their strategy and their goals. And you can start by, again, asking yourself the question, why are they hiring me? And then digging in, doing your research, which you're good at because you're a PhD, to find out. Number 4, stock equity. This is a great time, right? If you're asked the question, where do you see yourself in 5 years? If the interview's reached that point, it's a great question to ask about the benefits that other candidates have. And you can ask about them in a vague way. This is not where you want to start negotiating and getting into specifics, but you can ask if there's other candidates who have equity at the company, especially if it's a smaller company. You can ask about the stock options, right? You should know this beforehand because you can bring it up and say, you know, I really want to be successful in XYZ area with this company because I know this company's strategy is to get to XYZ area as well. And this is why I was really excited about your stock option plan because I want to work at a company where I can invest in their stock and I can grow along with the company's growth. Okay, so you have to, again, stop thinking like an academic, start thinking like a business professional. A lot of the companies you as PhDs are going to work at, you'll have an option to get equity or you'll have an option to get stocks. Okay, and there's a lot of different terms and titles, and there's some crossover there. It usually depends on the size of the company, whether they're publicly traded, etc. But you have to look into that and be prepared to talk about it beforehand. They'll like to see that you're thinking ahead. They'll like to see that you're approaching it from a we are in this together position. Last but not least, culture. Okay, culture. So when they're asking you questions about where you're going to be in 5 years, they want to match that up to their corporate strategy. They want to make sure your 5-year plan matches up with their 5-year plan. So you need to find ways to align these two things. You got to think of your answers beforehand. But don't just think in terms of corporate strategy, think in terms of corporate culture. Okay? So the corporate strategy is what they want to attain, and that should be aligned with where you want to be in 5 years. The question is, how do you get there? Culture is the how, right? The processes, the power structures, how things are organized, how things are done on a daily basis at a company. And 2 things I want you to consider with culture, 2 starting points are the average length that somebody's employed at that company. Ask this question again, turn the tables. They need to sell the position to you. Ask them, say, what's the average length that a candidate who was hired into this position, how long do they stay with the company? Some companies, and I remember the first company I was with, the average length of time was about a year or two. It was a startup. This is very normal for smaller companies. Not a long time, right? So you need to know that beforehand because it's going to affect the culture. The second company I got hired at, the average length of time was like 18 years. Okay, once a person was hired at that company, the likelihood that they would leave was very, very small. And there are quite a few companies like that, but there's a huge range, a huge spectrum. You need to know this because it will affect the culture. It's a great way to figure out whether or not this is the kind of company people get hired at and then continue to be allowed to move around to different departments. They continue to be supported in their growth, etc. You'll know that if people stay at that company for 5+ years, 10+ years, even more so. Okay, but if people are being, burned and churned, so to speak, if they're leaving every 6 months, you need to know that too. You also need to take into account the size of the company, right? Because that'll affect it as well. Second question, last thing we'll cover, is the balance. So what's the work-life balance like? You need to ask these questions. You need to make sure for yourself you understand what you're getting into at that company. It's going to affect where you're going to be in 5 years. If the company requires 50% travel, right? So 2 to 3 days out of every week you're going to be traveling and you don't realize that, that's something you should probably know, right? You need to understand that because it's going to affect your trajectory. How late do people work? Can they come in whenever they want? Does management say you can come in whenever you want, but you really can't? Everybody has to be there at 8. You have to start figuring these things out. Does the company say, oh, we're all about family and friends and work-life balance, but nobody has any pictures of their family in their offices, right? So you have to look for those areas of disconnect. You've got to start evaluating based on culture because culture and corporate strategy are tied hand in hand. So hopefully this helps you. If you have any questions on this, you can ask them in a comment below this video. Please let us know if you have questions on corporate strategy, on culture. If you've been on an interview and you've been confused, if you've been on a phone screen and you didn't get invited to a site visit, let us know. Let us know what you think happened, and we will help you. If you want all of our materials on business acumen, on corporate strategy, on how to answer management level interview questions, go to phdsgethired.com, put in your name and email, and we'll send all of these materials to you. Again, it's phdsgethired.com. As always, remember your value as a PhD and start thinking and acting like a successful industry professional.